Hello everyone, welcome to the Hypergamous Journey. My name is Denise. At this channel we discuss dating advice for women 55 and older who would like to marry or partner with a man of a higher socioeconomic level. I share my thoughts, opinions, and my experiences dating and finding the hypergamous man who is just right for me. Today I would like to discuss anger and bitterness. And I have been accused of this, and I know that I have been this way, especially prior to 2019. I was angry. Actually, this started pretty early for me. Of course, I didn't know I was angry and bitter, but it started that I can really put my finger on it when I was 20 something. When I would be, I grew up in New York City, I grew up in Harlem, when I would be going about my day and men in particular would say, "Smile, you look angry, it's not that bad," and those kinds of things. And I would get upset. It's like, who are they to tell me how to be, how to feel? And though I would just ignore them, I wouldn't get into any verbal confrontations with people because they said that, but I did take offense to that. And I think Kevin Samuels did a video with a young woman. She looked to be in her 20s, mid-20s to late 20s, when she mentioned that some random strange man told her to smile, and she resented it. And I get it. You know, you're walking down the street minding your business and some random dude tells you to smile, and you're like, well, who are you and why should I don't know you. And when you grow up in certain urban environments, you don't go around with a smile plastered on your face. You learn in those environments, growing up in those environments, that you have to have a game face. And today, the game face is called the resting bee face. But when you grow up in those kinds of environments, you're not hi, and smiling and all that kind of stuff, because you become a sitting duck. You know, people will begin to think that you are a pushover. You know, they bully you. We used to call it, pick on you. But today it's called bullying. So they would bully you. And it was just not an easy thing to grow up in those kind of urban environments and be happy-go-lucky and smiley face and everything like that. It's taken as a weakness. And yeah, so I understood where that young lady was coming from, but Kevin Samuel was saying that, using it as an example of how difficult Black women are and can be. He didn't put it into the context of where we live, where we grew up, how difficult it was to be a Black girl child growing up in those kind of environments, that you had to have attitude and sassiness to protect yourself from boys, men, young men, old men, your uncles, your cousins, just their friends. You know, you just had to have this armor of protection, especially if you were a little Black girl who didn't have any protection from her dad, her brother, anybody. So he didn't consider that. So I grew up angry and bitter. I didn't have protection from my father. I barely had protection from my mother. She worked all the time. She was very strict. So that was good. Now, in retrospect, it's like, it was good that she was strict and didn't allow me to run the street like a lot of the people, the young girls that I knew. who ended up pregnant and dropping out of school and God knows doing what else, drugs. So it was good she didn't allow that, but I had attitude. So in my 20s, I had attitude. So now you come, and because of my urban upbringing and environment, and then you put into play dating and no one really saying, you know, my mother did say, you know, well, all these boys really want is what's between your legs. And she made it sound gross, and which was true. So she's like, you know, so don't have any babies from these little boys, because you will be left with the baby and they will go on to the next girl who doesn't have a baby. And I saw that all around me happening. You know, they would be all loved up and everything. The boy and the girl would be all loved up, and every time you saw one, you saw the other. And then the girl's stomach is growing and the baby, and she's showing, and he may be gone by the time she gets 6 months pregnant, or by the time the baby is born, you don't see the guy. And in those cases where they manage to stay together, you know, they were just too young. They didn't get married or anything like that. The girl grows up, raises the kid, and, you know, goes to college or not, or gets a job, and they just grow apart because they're just too young. So you layer on the urban environment, having to grow up and have this armor on, and then you layer on disappointments with dating when you're a teenager, dating when you're a young woman in your 20s, and then you get out into, you know, you go to college or you get a job, and then you meet men of other races, socioeconomic levels, older men now are wanting to talk to you, men in their 30s and 40s and 50s when you're 20s and your 30s, or when you're in your 20s. And then if you fall for that, then you layer on your experiences with them. So by the time you have married and had a child or 2 or 3 or 4, you're just done. You know, the anger and the bitterness and everything and the disappointment, and you said you loved me and I thought we were going to be together forever, and it's not the fairy tale that you thought, and that Disney projects, and that, you know, our society projects. You know, marriage is going to be hunky-dory and the end all and be all, and it's not. And then, you know, you're 40, 50 years old, you're divorced, you have your children, you're still raising them, and maybe, you know, by the time you get my age, they're grown and out of the house. And now you look back over your life and you're like, I didn't think my life was going to be this way. And if you're not outright antagonistic, like I was like low-key anger and bitter. So I could present on the surface like I wasn't angry or bitter, but underneath I really was. I was seething with anger and bitterness because my relationships weren't turning out the way that I want them to. Partly my anger, bitterness, definitely male energy. So in 2019, when I came across Hypergamy, and Shira 7 was the first videos that came into my feed, and she focuses on, at that time, the videos I saw was sugar, you know, being a sugar baby and focusing on getting sugar daddies. Some of her stuff resonated with me. She said, you know, men just want one thing. You don't have to give it to them. And it's not a bad thing that they want that. That's just the way that they're made. But you get to control the access and make sure if you give them access that all of the terms are in your favor. And if he doesn't want to do that, that's fine. You don't have to give him access, but you get to determine it. So I had to dig down deep and get to the root of my anger and my bitterness. and start to really appreciate men. Was it easy? Heck no. But I am the kind of person, I've been doing, how do you call it, self-improvement work since my 20s. And I'm not perfect, but I'm not afraid to change. And that's the whole thing about hypergamy, is that you have to hold yourself accountable for your attitudes, for your beliefs, for your behavior, for your emotions, and it's all related. So I had to dig deep about why I was angry, why I was bitter, and the conclusion I came up with was, I have not really had a hard time with men. I didn't. I don't have horror stories about them. Yes, I've had some cheating going on, but it wasn't, one was really hurtful, but, none of the guys that I dated, like stole from me, stole money, just all the horrible things that I've heard. And really, when I look at them, I've had really good guys. I just didn't know what to do with them, or we weren't compatible, but most of them tried to please me. I did have a couple of hypergamy guys. Hypergamy. One in particular stands out, but most of the guys were, two stand out now. Most of the guys were at my level or above. I've dated professional men, didn't know what to do with that either. I've dated hypergamy men, a couple, two definitely come out. I dropped their butts, Though I've never been married and though I don't have children, I try to look at the good in that situation, in whatever situation that I perceive as negative. And what I have concluded is this. I didn't know the word for dating down, hypergamy. I did not know the word for dating somebody who has less than you, or dating someone who didn't have any ambition. But I can tell you this, I didn't stay long in those relationships. They may have lasted a couple of months, maybe 6, maybe 8. But I didn't do no years of that crap. And I think that's why I'm still single today, because on some intuitive level, I knew that dating men who didn't have at least what I had was not going to work for me. And maybe it's divine intervention that made it that way, because had I gone on and married some of these guys who wasn't on my level, I would be a statistic. And in many ways, I am still a statistic, a Black woman who's never married and didn't have children. So I'm a statistic in that way. But if for me, in my opinion, I'd rather be the statistic that I am now than to be a statistic where I've married some dude, helped him build, and now he's off, with a chick half his age, or divorced, or any of that. And it's not shaming anybody. It's just looking for the good in my situation. Just like there's good in the women who got married and had children and now they're divorced. There's good in that. They have children that they love, now maybe grandchildren. So they have a bloodline that they can look at. I don't have that. So just like I said, looking at the good in my situation, and every woman who wants better for herself at this phase and stage of her life can see the good in her situation. There is good in every situation. So I feel like I have excavated the bitterness and the anger from myself, and I don't have blame for any of the relationships that I've had. I don't blame them. When I look at the relationships I've had, I've always learned something from them, always, and held myself accountable, because I wouldn't have had those relationships if I hadn't agreed to them. They didn't force me. they didn't force me to be in a relationship with them. I willingly entered into it, and they taught me so much. So I feel like I'm not angry and bitter anymore. And my anger and bitterness also was at other people, you know, my upbringing and my environment and all of that. And I've made peace with all of that, because really growing up in New York City, Jay-Z and Alicia Keys, you know, the Empire, I think the Empire State, or, you know, Empire State of Mind. Yeah, I think that's it. Empire State of Mind. I love that song, because if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, is my opinion. And I also believe that if you are a person who was born in an urban city and you've made it out of there without going crazy, losing your mind, living, you don't have any addictions and craziness, you've done well. You can make it anywhere. That's what I say. So thank you for watching. Don't forget the statement journals on Amazon, and let's excavate the anger and the bitterness and hold ourselves accountable, be self-aware, because at this age and stage of our life, we have more years behind us than we do in front of us. And we want those years to be happy, anger-free, bitter-free, and we'll feel better about ourselves. We will embody forgiveness, understanding, patience. I know that's what I've done, and acceptance from others, and we accept others how they are. So it's wonderful, and we do it for ourselves. First, we do it for ourselves, and once we embody that excavation of bitterness and anger, it will go out and float out into the universe to others, and people will begin to say, oh, you seem so calm, and you seem so peaceful, and I just love your energy, and all of that. That's what I get. So it can happen for you too, but we have to hold ourselves accountable, and we have to go deep and figure out why we're doing what we're doing, and make a commitment to ourselves to get rid of it and to live more authentically, more graciously, more lovingly, and with more compassion, empathy, and understanding. Thank you for watching. Bye.